right, I'd like to call to order the Wednesday Board of Finance meeting, January 8th. I'd like to open it with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have in attendance 5 board members with Sean Hathorn missing. The first selectman is also not here at this time. I'd like to move on to public comment.
I don't know where the sign-up sheet is, but there's no public here.
It's over here. Okay.
Anyone signed up on it?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Communications, correspondence.
Nothing. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 11th, 2019.
Discussion. Vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
I'm gonna make a motion that we move from new business, the financial advisor presentation before the report of the first selectman.
I'll second.
Discussion. All those in favor,
Aye.
motion passes.
Assuming you'd like to move up in the.
I think that's a good idea. Why not? I mean, I love being in town hall, but yes,
Thank
that
you.
sounds good. I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're gonna need you to state your name for the record, please.
Absolutely. Matt Spurndle from Phoenix Advisors, and we are the town's new, as of the last few months, municipal advisor, formerly known as financial advisor. Now we're specifically called municipal advisor. And Marcia and Steve kind of asked me to come in and give sort of an overview, a little bit about what we do, me specifically, a little bit about our background, and then also sort of an overview of the town from the credit perspective with S&P. Specifically, we just did a couple of issuances, so a quick summary of that, talk a little bit about the credit, the market, try to cover a lot of things in a fairly short period of time. So we put together this presentation, which just kind of covers all those items. Feel free to, however you guys want this to go, fine with me. But we will just jump right in and do that. So that being said, I think everyone has a copy. So just who we are as a firm, and me specifically. I'll start with me. My bio's in the back, but I've been in the municipal advisory business for over 20 years. With Peoples for 9, Phoenix for 11. I run the Connecticut office. I've been doing this my entire really professional career, and work with a ton of issuers throughout Connecticut. I run the Milford office, which is our Connecticut office for Phoenix Advisors. And as we see here, the firm itself was created in 2004. We're independent, expert advice, that kind of stuff. We have 23 people in the firm in total in Connecticut, which I oversee. We work as a team, as always, on everything. We know the underwriter's viewpoint, so it gives us a good idea of where your bonds should price. We have people in the firm who work for underwriting firms, and we have access to all their information. Anyways, a great reputation, and because there's no other lines of business that we're in, we have no conflicts of interest, and we always are on your side as fiduciaries. Alright, so that's pictures. Again, there's just where we are in terms of our office down in Milford, and our headquarters is down in Bordentown, New Jersey. So that's where we do that. And just, again, overall, I'm not going to get into too much depth and read every single bullet, but, we try to be, obviously, as organized as possible, creative, with a lot of expertise on the quantitative side of things, trying to do things efficiently, using technology, specifically Bloomberg the bond buyer. TM3 is sort of what the underwriters all use to figure out where your bonds should be priced, and that's a great source of information that we all have access to. Munex is what we size the bonds with, and obviously run all the numbers. We try to be as accessible and available to our clients at all times, and we're obviously hands-on. I'm not shifting everything down to some junior person. I'm pretty involved. I think Anyways, we, since inception, there's some stats there, but we're the number one FA in Connecticut for local government authorities for the last 5 years. We're actually ranked top 10 nationally for competitive deals and issues under 10 million, and those stats just came out for the 2019, like in the last couple of days. So that's kind of cool for a firm that's only in 2 states. And so it's firm-wide, about 2,700 deals, 28 billion, you can see there. Connecticut only about 650, 7.6 billion. We have 74 clients in Connecticut, so we have a really good understanding of what's going on in the state, obviously, and towns, cities, schools, fire districts, independent authorities, and so on and so forth we deal with. So we really do run the gamut. And I think when you flip the page, you'll see this is my little map that I like to show that includes all the issuers that we work with in the state.
Question there, do you, what diligence do you do to accept a town onto your?
Well, really, it's if a town is looking to change municipal advisors or needs help, we will make it work.
Okay, so it's all right.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it works. And you're all very similar in many ways, but there are some challenges. If you were to look deeper into those yellow towns, there's Hamden and Waterbury and Plymouth and some of those folks, and then there's the Westports and Wiltons and Brookfields that are all very well run. So we have the expertise to basically do any issuer that needs help. We're willing to do that. So absolutely. So that's that. And to talk a little bit about what we do, in terms of developing the debt management and structuring plan based on what you need when you're looking at building new projects and have things coming down the pipe in terms of what that might look like. Looking at the various financing options that you might have. Not just say, well, we need to build a school. We're definitely doing bonds. I mean, there's bonds and notes, short-term, long-term. There's direct purchases and bank loans and things that if they could be more competitive in pricing and efficiency, then we obviously look at those things so that you get the lowest cost and the most efficient transaction. Obviously, looking at cash flows and the budget impacts as far as mill rate impacts going forward, dollars to the budget, debt per capita, what it does to the ratios as you layer in debt or pay debt off. Looking at just trying to be innovative along the way with structuring and so on. Supporting the issue with market updates and in terms of interest rates and where things are. We're obviously available for in-person meetings, which is kind of nice when we're close by. We put together a calendar for every sale we do that gets the issuer, bond counsel, the paying agent, the banker, if it's necessary, to basically lay out the timeline. So we work through that, which we've done a couple times now with Brookfield. And we obviously look for the optimal market access point to where we can best price your bonds or notes, depending on what type of sale we're doing. Okay. Now, one thing we do is, and I didn't print full copy out, but rating presentation. So this document here is the document that we used when we spoke with Standard & Poor's not too long ago for the refunding bond issue. And basically, it's a comprehensive document. It talks about, all the various points that they're going to be interested in, graphs and charts and trend analysis and some comparative data, some of which is, I have some charts in here.
I can email that.
Yeah, which we could share with you and you could take a look at or whatever. But again, a comprehensive rating presentation to ensure that your rating, which is obviously AAA, stays that way forever, hopefully. And if there's any issues or problems or concerns that the rating agency might have that might either be obvious to you or not so obvious, we try to make sure that we uncover those and develop a strategy to best illustrate what the town is doing if there are those types of issues ahead of time, so that it reflects positively and you take a negative, make it into a positive. So that's one of the things we do. Obviously, we coordinate all that stuff. We put together this document in the town, which you're probably familiar with, the official statement, obviously all the great information that we work with primarily Marcia to get together. We look at comparable issues to make sure that your bonds are pricing appropriately if it's a negotiated issue or if it's competitive, to make sure when we do get bids that it makes sense and that it's in line with few things that we've been up to. Recently reappointed in Stanford. Obviously, we were recently appointed as FA here, which is down sort of in the bottom right-hand corner, and we did a competitive refunding very recently. And there's some other towns, Ridgefield, Simsbury. We present, I specifically at the New England GFOA. Every time it's in Connecticut. First in state in issues over the last 5 years. So just some kind of cool high-level stuff. And then, boiling it down and getting a little more specific to the town, it's just, in terms of recent deals that we've been involved with, the first issue we had, which right after appointment, we had to work very quickly to get the notes going, since the notes that were coming due were, I think, in November 14th. So we sold the 5.33 competitively on November 5th. The bonds were dated November 14th. They're maturing a year later. 5 bids were received, with TD Securities getting the award at a 1.29% net interest cost, which is not 0.5 where we were probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, but still, from a historic basis, extremely low for anyone who knows anything about interest rates. And those numbers might actually be drifting lower based on whatever the Fed does this year. So we'll see how that goes. And that's a little snip of the official statement on the right. And it was for various capital projects and things like that. So a year from now, a month ago, we'll be selling some kind of issue to permanently finance or issue some short-term notes or what have you. We also did a refunding, which you're probably aware of. We did just under 3.5 million to refinance some bonds that had been issued like 8 years ago, and we were able to do that competitively, which is nice. Whenever you sell it competitively, you're getting the best rate on that particular day. Rather than on a negotiated offering, we have to hammer the underwriter to make sure that you get the right pricing, which we do all the time as well. But when you're able to do it competitively, I think you just know that you got the best rate possible. And in this particular case, we got 8 bids. We got a 136 on a bond issue that went out, I guess, about 11 years. So you had a 129 on a note, 136 on a bond. So it makes the bond sound pretty good. I mean, it's 12 years. Now it's extremely flat yield curve. Short-term rates and medium-term rates are very similar. So that's the environment we're in. But 8 bids and a 136, it was fantastic. In fact, the issue closed this morning. It closed about, I don't know, maybe 8 hours ago or something.
Were you surprised by the number of bids that we received from the?
I kind of was, particularly on the bond side. I mean, we do, we're in the market, in Connecticut every week, a couple times a week. So again, because we have so many clients, we see kind of what the trends are, and who's bidding, who's not bidding, what's getting bids, what's not. It's kind of a smaller issue. It's under 3.5 million, but it's AAA, and it's a shorter term. Yeah, so the appetite's there. These underwriters don't make much on this deal. I mean, Morgan, I think, made like $7,000 on this deal, which is like nothing in underwriter, language. But it was also a short term. It wasn't 20 years; it was 10. So it's easy for them to sell. Like there's only a few callable bonds. There's a lot of things going on in that deal that make it attractive and easy for them. So I'm not surprised that if they got 5, I would have been happy with that too. But eight's on the higher side of what we've seen lately. So that was exceptional. And if you look at it, Piper Jaffray, Robert Baird, those guys are at 140, then mid 140s. So the market was probably more in like the early 140s, but Morgan Stanley came in and was just super aggressive and won at a 136. So that's just more savings to you guys. And in fact, it ended up with $275,000 debt service savings over the course of the term of the issue. So kind of a good, nice little deal. It gets done when rates are low, and we were able to move quickly. So it's kind of exciting. And just a couple quick charts on interest rates. We talked about it, but you can see that's a 5-year chart on the left. The blue bar is the 10-year Treasury, and the red bar is effectively the 10-year tax-exempt, yield curve for all intents and purposes. And you can see over the last, year or so, rates have come down like a rock. After the election, when Trump was elected, rates went through the roof in a very, very quick period of time. Total knee-jerk reaction, kind of like based on, anticipation for all this great growth and all these things are going to happen, and equities went crazy, and bonds sold out like a maniac. And we really didn't think we'd be in this environment like that quickly, where rates just sank so low that for those issuers who had bonds that are currently are callable or were close to our call date, we're able to now pick up a $3.5 million deal or a $4 million deal somewhere else, or so, because the rates are just at almost absolute all-time lows. So that's kind of the environment we're in. You can just see like that on the next chart on the right. The green bar was a year ago, and all the other ones are the one I think is red dotted is the one that's current, and you can just see how much rates have come down all across the curve, almost 100 basis points in some cases. So to be in the market, it's obviously not the worst time, at least from the borrower side. So, and we don't, in terms of what's going to happen next year or 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Of course, nobody knows that. If we did, we wouldn't be here. We'd probably be someone else, and a very more exciting with a nice view of the water. But from an overall global economic growth situation and volatile geopolitical type of things, it doesn't look like the rates are going to be increasing by a lot anytime soon. And it's interesting because if you go back for the last, I'd say almost 10 years, we would just say, okay, rates are going to go up. The rates are always, you knew it was going to happen, it was coming, it kind of came, rates would come up and then they'd go back down. But we're in an environment where it doesn't really look like rates are going to go up that much anytime soon. So, you look at global growth and issues in China and Iran and all these things, and all that's doing is potentially pushing rates lower or at least keeping them stable. At one point, I don't know what the ratio is today, but at one point in the last couple months, the percentage of negative rates, throughout the world, like sovereign governments, was like 80% of rates were negative at one particular time. Japan, China, Germany, all those kinds of things. So when you look at the Treasury, the 10-year Treasury for the United States has a 180 today, roughly, and that's pretty attractive compared to a zero in Germany. So because of that, I think you're still going to see demand and for Treasury, U.S. Treasury, and also as a result, the municipal sector's rates should stay fairly low too, because they're kind of all priced off that curve. So that's kind of my 2 cents, which aren't really worth too much. I'm not an economist, I'm not a research guy, but from what we see, that's kind of the direction of things. So, which is good if you have bigger projects coming up. Of course, I know you do. So that's good. I was going to switch gears a little bit to, again, Brookfield specific in terms of the credit overview. Just again, they're really small, these charts, but it's just a nice little snapshot. We use a lot of these charts in the rating presentation, and what it really does is it shows the town versus the other AAAs, S&P AAAs in the state at a given point in time. So this first page is all finance and wealth related. So there's total fund balance on the top left to revenues. There's unassigned fund balance to revenues on the top right. And then down below it's basically grand list per capita on the bottom left, per capita income on the bottom right. And without being able to necessarily read the names if it's too small in the font, you can see the yellow bar, that's Brookfield. And you want to be as far right as possible, at least, to maintain, the rating and not have to worry about any major concerns. So it's just visually, you can look at it in like a second and say, okay, we're in pretty good shape. Total fund balance of revenues, it was on a little bit on the lower side, but not that bad. And if you look at unassigned, it's close to the middle of the pack. Again, income and grand list per capita.
So the state medians are just on AAA?
The state median is actually all towns.
Really?
So so it's surprising is the AAAs actually can tend to be a little bit lower on the percentage because they have the wealth. So you look at Lower Fairfield County, they don't need 16-17% to be a AAA because they have per capita income of whatever $100,000. So it is kind of interesting how that works. But yeah, that's the state median.
So, if as a board of finance, and we're looking at
forecast you would think that we should look at?
For maintenance and stuff, there's a lot of numbers, obviously, as we work through forecasting and what impacts are on, ratios and things like that. But, and to back me into a corner and tell
Yeah.
me exactly which ones, a rating agency will never tell you that because they don't, it's always like 30% here, 20% here, but the fund balance is the single biggest number. That's no surprise. I mean, everybody kind of can agree
That's
with
what
that.
we're low on.
Yeah, and we're low on it. Now, at least the unassigned, which is the one that's just over to the right there, that's, at the end of the day, that's more important
It's
than
still
the
low.
total. It's still on the lower side. So I guess going forward, when you're adding new debt that could be of some, semi, magnitude, is that we would definitely not want to see the debt ratios erode and then fund balance slide off and move a few notches down. I mean, you're still at over 10%, and I think these were even the 18 numbers, so your fiscal year in 19, I don't know what they look like, but yeah. So again, notching up, that probably slides you up 3 places. But like for instance, S&P for unassigned fund balance as a percentage of the budget effectively is 8 to 15% gives you the second tier of credit. So 15 and over gives you tier 1. Second, 8 to 15. So if you go, if you're at 11 or if you're at 9, I mean, it's not going to necessarily move the rating. Now, on top of that, if it's at a reasonable level, like 10 or 9%, but you're showing a couple consecutive years of erosion, that will get them concerned. Will that get you to downgraded? Probably not. But those are the types of things that they look at as well, not just the snapshot versus the comps, but also what's the trend. Is it your goal to continue to improve those levels, or do you feel more comfortable at a lower level? I know, there's potentially a policy drafted or getting worked on and those types of things that are important. But I think above and beyond everything else, that's the one metric that they look the most at, for better or worse, quite honestly. So that's the one. Once we start to layer in new debt, it's, on the debt side of things, I'd say, there's debt per capita, there's debt to grand list, there's a million different things. There's debt to budget, again, is a pretty significant metrics that they, level that they use, because obviously that directly impacts, every year your budget, not some number of grand list per capita to debt or whatever. So, how leveraged are you, and how much of your budget each year is going to debt, and how is that going to grow over time or reduce over time. So I would say that's probably one on the debt side that they look at the most. And then probably lastly, pensions is the other, pension funding is a huge one.
Yeah.
So, and that's just in the news all the time, so you can't avoid that one. And it's not necessarily, well, we're at 98% overall funded, or 102, or 85. That's obviously very significant, but it's also, are you making the actuarially determined contribution, the ADEC, every year, and are you being consistent with that? And is there a scenario where, well, we had a tough year, so we cut that in half, and we're only paying 50%, like that? That's one of the worst things you can do. So those are just like a few of the.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
As we get into our large project
Yeah.
and issue the large debt, the model that we're seeing, there's going to be a period of time, I don't remember if it's 2 years or 4 years, 2 to 5 years, where a number of these ratios are just getting blown out of the water by the large debt issue.
Right.
And we've been told in the past by several different people that a bubble like that won't necessarily have a negative long-term impact because it's identifiable and
Right.
potentially temporary. Do you
Right.
agree with that?
Absolutely. As long as, well, part of it is too, as we talk to them and we let them know what's coming down the pike, they can expect that, which is obviously a big part of it, so that they're not necessarily surprised. But yeah, there's been times, numerous, where there's even issues where they have a debt policy and then it's at a certain level, but they have to build a new school. So for a year or two, maybe it goes above the ratio.
They would want to see a plan to get back into quote-unquote compliance isn't the right word, but
Yeah, if you're not adhering to your own policy,
right.
then, and in fact, I think the town's in the stages of developing those and sort of codifying those policies. My recommendation, of course, would be to say, well, we're going to maintain 5% debt service to budget when let's say your debt service budget is 8%. like then that's just they just throw that document in the garbage because it's meaningless. I mean, if you're not going to adhere to it when you adopt it, then that's not worth it. You know, develop a policy that you can actually adhere to,
Yep.
and you know, give yourself flexibility in that policy is always something that's
Would they
important.
also look at operating expenses?
You mean overall expenses?
Like if taxes were to go up 5%, 8%, if we were jumping by huge
Yeah,
increases?
they look at
Is that
that.
also a variable? Because then you
Yeah.
can't keep up with your debt services without raising taxes.
Right. Well, they look at that too. It's not. They don't look at that number in isolation as much. In fact, you know, the flip side is you say, well, we don't ever raise taxes. You know, we keep our mill rate flat. And there's certain people that would be sitting in the room or in an audience that would be very happy with that answer. The rating agency is not that person.
I agree.
You know what I'm
with
saying?
that.
Like,
What I'm
so-
saying is though, large jumps, would that be part of it?
I think whenever you have a large project that you know is coming, the goal is to develop that plan so far ahead of time that you know that we're going to be able to step it in gradually.
I'm not talking CapEx,
Yeah.
I'm talking OpEx.
You're talking about,
Does that have an effect? CapEx, we plan, we know, we're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
build a school 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm saying, if we were to have a budget increase this year of 8%, and then next year 10%, is that
well,
looked upon
you
by
know, if
these?
it happens, then we have to have a reason and explain it. I mean, is it health insurance? Is it teacher contracts? Is it the state of Connecticut stopped giving you aid?
Okay.
I mean, if those things happen, then you have to deal with them. It's just, it's also, if something like that happens, then it's more, how does that impact everything else?
Right,
You know what I'm
that's my
saying?
question, how does that impact everything else?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, how does that looked upon, how do we move that around? Does it have an impact?
Well, if your expenditures go up 10%, what's that doing to your fund balance? All right, you're probably not raising taxes 10% to hit that, or are you?
To your balance, and that's gonna blow that.
Right, or are you now?
This is the knock-on that I'm asking about, that's where that's where my question was
Yeah.
leading. Like, if we increase, what's the knock-on effect on the variables that are counted in? So if we increase our budget, like John just said, then our fund balance percentage drops. Not by spending it, but just by the numbers.
Right, well, you're talking about in terms of the denominator increases and the
Right.
numerator stays the same, so naturally the percentage goes down. Well, again, it's all part of knowing that that's what they look at. So as your budget if your budget does grow, then you need to be adding to your fund balance, or that number as a percentage is going to decrease over time. Now, your debt to budget,
Exactly.
you know, you have a positive on that side. I guess nobody wants huge budget increases, but yeah, there's a lot of factors
But
that go.
it's not, I hate to say this word, but it's not just quantitative, there's also the qualitative, the
Right.
management, the fiscal management side of it that they're looking at.
Exactly, and that's
So
when we talk about the
There's
planning.
the Board
and
of
the- and
Finances
all that,
on
yeah.
top of the next 10 years through that model.
Through the model, through the policies, through that, and they assess, and they do assess your management. They try to put a label on your quality of your management, and Brookfield is at like the second highest rating there.
But once you make a model, you have to do your best to try to stick to it.
You do, absolutely correct. Exactly, giving them a bunch of policies and models and things, and then coming them to them the
And a year
next
later,
year,
throwing it out
you're
the
not
window.
adhering to it, and the numbers are all.
So then my next question would be, Marcia and the team has developed the model, was that presented to you to present to the agencies now?
We talked about the
talked
model.
about it, yeah.
Moody's, when we had that call, I think that was before your
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
When we had the Moody's call and whether we were gonna be a negative outlook or a neutral outlook, they asked for a copy of it. Standard & Poor's, I don't think we talked about
Yeah, I
it, they
remember on
know
the
about
call,
it,
we
but,
spoke about it, yeah.
but I don't think they ever asked for a copy of it.
Yeah, no, they didn't, and I mean, that'll be something that as we move forward,
They
they'll
could
wanna
ask
see.
for it later.
Oh yeah,
Right.
You still
absolutely.
had better stick to it,
Yeah.
or do your best.
You do your best. I mean, things happen. You start the project, then there's a lawsuit, or you know, the architect goes bankrupt or something. I mean, these things happen. But believe me, I've been around and seen those things happen. So you do your best, you know, and they understand that too. They're not going to hold you to. Now, if you say, well, we're expecting 12% fund balance at the end of the year, and then the end of the year comes and you get audited and you have 6% fund balance, stuff like that is not looked upon very nicely. So that, but the other things they understand that these things happen. And things
Well, I don't want to
change.
beat around the bush, so let me just be direct with it.
Yeah.
So we have a model that says we're gonna stick to a 3% tax increase over the next 10 years.
Okay.
And if we were to come out this year and ask for 6.8%, would that, I mean, that's an issue. First year after you make your model.
That would probably be an issue. Would that really be a major concern from a rating and credit perspective and your ability and willingness to pay your debt service as a AAA with all these other great things that, you know, fit right in the model? I don't believe so. Now, of course, your average taxpayer is probably not going to like that. You know, and stuff like
Right.
that.
I mean,
But
also implying a 6 point, it's not gonna be that every year. I mean, we don't anticipate some of the things that we're starting to see, but at the same time, you know, if you were saying, well, we predicted 3 and we're saying 6 and we're actually going to do 6, that's a totally different story than predicting 3 but having, you know, 1 year that ends up being 6 and that gets us caught up to where we need to be because of
what's driving?
unexpected.
Yeah, what's driving the 6.8?
Especially.
It's special ed mostly.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, so what are you going to do about that? Like, there's certain things. The state cuts your funding, or they say you need to pay a third of the
Right, all
teacher's
those
pension. Or,
variables, yeah.
there's so many variables in
So
there.
you're able to discuss that with them. And
Oh yeah, we have to, because otherwise, you know, the stuff that they see, you know, on paper versus what goes behind that is very important and critical on those telephone calls. And you know, that's why they don't have robots, you know, giving you your rating, because they have to get, you know, all that info, the qualitative side of things, and get the full story so that they can then present that to their committee, and they can, because that's what happens, the lead analyst goes to a committee of like 5 or 6 people, and then they discuss all these things and determine where, you know, your rating should
then they
be.
throw a dart at the board.
Yeah, or that, I don't know, either one or the other. One or the other. But-
So let me ask another question if I might. Would it make sense, and if so, what would be the best way to apply it to, let's say we know we have a school coming, it's gonna be a large expenditure, would it make sense to start building a fund for that now? You know, not that we wanna raise taxes any more than we're gonna have,
Yeah,
but we
right.
know it's coming.
Right.
So would it make sense to raise some now so that we have some pocket of money to offset some of that in the future?
Again, there's a lot of considerations here. There's considerations to your tax rate and to what you know, all those things aside.
We're gonna work on that.
All
I'm
those
just
things
asking,
aside,
is it-
absolutely, if that's something that the town can do, that does nothing but help you in the future. It's not uncommon for an issuer to do that. You know, there's some issuers where you have a scenario where your debt service is at a certain level today,
Mhm.
and next year you know it's going to drop, and the year after it might drop, but then you're going to have this huge spike because you have this project. So level fund it, take that increment, and put it in a. You can't really call it a debt service fund, but it's effectively a debt service fund.
You can call it assigned fund balance.
You can call it assigned fund balance. You can call it a mill rate stabilization fund. There's a few different things you can call it.
Rate stabilization fund.
Yeah,
I
that's
like it.
actually a thing. Yeah. So you can do that, and then when it gets to the issue, you know, the large school project, it's not as if you're going to say, well, we're going to do one issue of $50 million, because you have so little. There's so small amount of flexibility that you can structure that thing to not have a mega spike that it doesn't, and plus from a cash flow perspective, it doesn't make sense. But typically, you know, a bond with a note, another bond with a note, you know, break it into a few tranches and
Yes.
stagger it in and try to offset the spike with as your debt service is falling off over time as well. And identifying those years where you have the drop to try and structure things to kind of get some benefit from that too. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Although on some of the structuring, the state's gonna have a impact because you can't have the principal payments.
Well, that's what I was saying. You
double.
can't really have in a one issue scenario. You don't have a lot of flexibility. You can, if you do one issue, you have to structure it either equal principal or close thereof equal debt service, which is like a mortgage, which is definitely not recommended because you pay, God, the interest on that is insane. And there's some flexibility with some adjustments, but whenever you start your first principal payment, you can't have any payment beyond that payment as more than 150%. So if your first payment's $100,000, nothing can be over, you know, 150. So it really limits you in terms of how, you know, you can structure. Now you could, you know, step it in gradually a little bit, but typically there's really not a ton of flexibility with that.
That's to avoid manipulation of.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to kick the can, but they're not going to let you kick it like that, unless you're like Hartford. you know. And they'll just write new legislation for you
Yeah.
to do whatever they
out.
want,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
stuff like that. But so clicking the next page. This is the debt. We've been talking a lot about debt. This is where you are with debt. Again, on this, further right is better. You have debt to grand list, so overall debt to grand list on the top left, debt service to the budget effectively on the top right, overall debt to per capita bottom left, and annual unemployment, which is more of a wealth thing, and employment. But you can see the debt ratios there and where you are at this point. And of course, as you layer in sort of some bigger bond issues, you're going to potentially slide a little bit to the left, but you know, in isolation, a lot of these things you're able to withstand without having a major impact on your rating or even a red flag. It's when you have 2 or 3 issues, and by issue I don't mean bond issue, 2 or 3 areas of concern that deteriorate sort of at the same time. That's when you have a problem. You know, fund balance slips a little, your debt goes up, and then maybe your pension's not getting quite funded right, or your top employer leaves town. You know, these types of things are what end up, you know, working into some kind of a rating change to the worse. Unless it's like you just took your entire fund balance and just used it on the next budget. That will do it right there.
All right. I'm going to put you on the spot. see what happens this time.
Yeah.
Because last financial advisor wouldn't answer me. $75 million operating budget, 12% fund balance. What would an appropriate range of steady state debt be?
Of steady state debt?
We're going to amortize some, issue some, but what would be an appropriate debt amount for that profile?
In terms of
Over the long term.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables. That's why I want to just get the. I'll give you an answer.
Sure.
One way or another. You mean in terms of like overall, like bonded debt in total?
Yeah.
Any given time,
Yeah.
debt outstanding?
Yeah,
you're saying?
and a range, knowing that you're going to be under some years and over some years, and there's project.
Like,
Take
like
out-
if you have, for
take out
instance,
the bubble.
for
Take out
instance,
the
right now,
bubble.
let me just take a look here, and just to see where you are right now. 'Cause I don't have that off the top of my head.
Pretty close to what Dan's saying. Be my guess.
Talking, it's like 36 million, right? I think.
In terms of, let's see here. Well, as
Oh,
of the
I
date
think
of
we're
this,
43.
we're right about 40.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
say
you.
44. So 44
Is that one?
million plus or minus. You know, a few $1 million amongst friends here doesn't make a difference.
Exactly.
So, outstanding debt at any given year. Obviously, you're going to pay off. Obviously, let's take a look here just for fun.
You know, something to run off. I know that.
Yeah, you pay whatever $1 million off of principal on the sewer side. You pay about $3 million a year. So, if you're at 45 now for round numbers, roughly, and I'm looking at just ratios and kind of trying to see where things are, there are certain metrics that will kind of say at this size you should be at this level. And S&P publishes those. I don't have those all memorized because those are sort of like deeper into the what really don't impact things quite as much. But I could say if you went to just to 90, and you doubled that, let's just say. Well, if you doubled that, your per capita, you're going to be by far the highest debt per capita. Your debt burden's going to be the highest. Your debt service to budget's going to be the highest too. So below 90 would probably be a good starting point. You know, so.
That's at the
I think I can answer that.
No, I'm just trying to say now. Okay, well, you want me to
just double our debt.
That's probably no good. But I mean, honestly, if you were to put on, and again, without looking at a forecast and a model, and what we try to do, just to take a step back, is we'll look at the next however many years of bonding you're looking at going out, what the projects are, how big they are, and saying, okay, based on these assumptions and this timing of bond sales, let's look at what that actually does to your ratios.
Yep.
And what does that do to your outstanding debt, and what does that do to all these charts and things like that, and try to determine, not necessarily to say you're bonding too much or too little, but to say, what does it look like if we are able to buy ourselves another year before that next bond issue? Stuff like that you can do, because I mean, when a school project's getting going, it's got to get paid for at some point, and it's going to be paid for with bonds. It's just a matter of when that actually happens. So to say, well, I think you're at $80 million, you should be okay,
Yep.
and that's quite possible. that you could probably get to that level, or 75 million possibly, assuming everything else stays strong and the economy stays, strong, and the state doesn't come out of nowhere and whack you. So.
I appreciate that. So I appreciate that there's gonna be a bubble, but I just wanna know where, over a reasonable period of time, where we should try to manage.
Yeah.
it.
Well, I remember.
Well, so you were just talking about the high end. That's
Right.
not necessarily where you should try.
No,
to
exactly. It's almost. I mean, people ask me that, but typically it's like, how much can we borrow? Put them all together and let's take a look at it. So what we'll do is say, okay, well, we don't want to say you could borrow $100 million and be fine, because that's not really what we're here to do. It's more from the perspective of, we have this project, and potentially it's going to cost this amount of money. What are the how do we maintain our rating? What's the likelihood that we'll be okay, or where should we try to maintain the rating? I mean, we have some flexibility with terms of bond issues, with timing of bond issues, so you can, kind of at least try to work these things in, so that it's not this huge spike and then all of a sudden.
So I mean, we don't have to belabor it tonight, but it's gonna be an ongoing discussion. It's not even as much about the school, because that's gonna be a spike, but it's then, if we're up here and it's about to come down to, and then we have another big project,
Right.
and that becomes a new
Right.
plateau as opposed to managing it down.
Right.
That's the long-term question that we need to get our arms around, not tonight, but.
No, but we have issuers that are AAA, and right now, actually not too far from here, where, they have, I don't know, $30 million of outstanding bonds, and they approved a $100 million school project. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna keep that AAA. Like, we've done a ton of modeling and a bunch of scenarios. So, but you don't wanna say, oh yeah, you could issue, $100 million and be fine.
So let's go the reverse of that, what Dan's talking about. Let's go, we give you the list of our projects. Marcia has the list of where we're timing it. Can you look at that now and see where we get the best rates and savings if we move the project up, where we could save $250,000 on a project, do the rates now? So say we have a $5 million project that we're pushing out year 8 or whatever. Can we manage it in the near term at lower rates, like you just did a $275,000 savings
Right.
on it? Are you looking at it the reverse way, where we can get a better deal by moving projects in?
Just to keep Matt off the hot seat, let him think
Yeah.
for a minute. That when we looked at the school project, if we were to take that debt on, we will be about if we take the debt to budget,
Right.
we'll be about the highest percentage, if not the highest percentage in the state. I mean,
Right.
there's no way we
probably.
could
You can't do that
absorb
stuff.
more, in my humble opinion.
Again, a lot of this has to do with when, the timing of when you really need to do whatever project it is that you need to do. So a lot of times it's like, we need a new school. It's got to happen.
Right.
So we need to make it work in the context of your rating and the timing and keeping costs as low as possible. I mean, in this environment, we are in a very, very low rate environment.
Mhm.
Now, does that mean you need to do everything today? And that's not to say that rates won't stay where they are for some time or go low, go down from here. But I mean, it's typically the scenario of, we're doing a project, it's $20 million. We were going to do a note sale because we're not really done with the project, and we don't really think it's. Then we say, well, listen, interest rates are extremely low. We might be able to work 10 million of that in, lock it up, stagger it into the debt service, and then issue that other 10 million as a note, because maybe you're getting some grants on that you can't bond the whole thing, or there's some variables, or there are projects that are maybe not ready to be bonded permanently. Because there's a lot of different variables that come into play here, which determines when you do or do not bond. It's not just rates are low, we should do it. But obviously, when rates are lower, we try to advise to, capture some of that environment and lock in. If you can take it, again, if you can manage that in the budget process, if you can take that increase in the debt service. So there's a lot of different scenarios. But it all has to, I think you said you're getting newer numbers or better numbers or something?
We're trying to get we just have a new project manager that who just joined on, and so the first meeting will be next Friday, a week from Friday. So we're trying to get the cash flow numbers for that.
And that kind of
Project
drives.
manager for what?
They have an owner's project manager for the school building project, and
Can you just refresh my memory as to when we're, on our model, when we're saying that school opens?
Fall 2022.
yes.
because I've heard a number of times, I don't wanna really, you're here, but that the approvals are all in place.
Not that I know of.
That's what I've heard,
The-
and I know they're not. I keep biting my tongue, but I'm also on the Wetlands Commission. We're the first one to see an application. We have no application on the school. And that is a long process. So I don't know, we gotta look at that, and what that's gonna do to our model if this gets pushed out years potentially.
And the flip side again would be to move in other projects, capture the market, and move forward on other things.
Would it be an opportunity to do something before that started, but I don't know. We're gonna have to have some talks about this. Sorry.
All good. All right, let's roll on here and get you home. How's that?
That sounds good. Hopefully my car's still there, so windy. So this is the last. The last. This is the last of the slides. Yeah, before I went. This is just some excerpts from the S&P rating. I don't know if you've seen a copy of this or not, but I just wanted to highlight some of the things. When you look at it quickly, very strong economy, strong management, strong budgetary performance, budgetary flexibility, very strong liquidity, strong debt service profile, and strong institutional framework. Is, in a nutshell, this kind of covers all the different components of what they look for, and this is where we are starting at. So, the way that they label the various topics is either very strong, then it goes to standard and or adequate and vulnerable or something. So you're at the very high mark on all these items. The rating is in great shape. I think that management score could potentially go to very strong once potentially those policies we talked about get adopted. If that's the case, that does nothing but improve that one metric so that if, as the debt comes up, that sort of helps to keep that in line a bit. But, in terms of the profile, it was a very smooth call. We actually spoke with the head of the Northeast or New England with S&P, and he's very comfortable with where the rating is, and the committee was very positive. So overall, you guys have done a great job, at least from what the numbers that they see and what they see going forward. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Any more questions? I think your car can go home. How's that? Thank you for your time.
All right.
Appreciate
All right.
it.
Nice to meet you all, and
Nice to meet you.
have a good night, and I'm sure we'll see you again at some point. Absolutely. Thank you. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Of course.
All right.
Cute dogs, whoever
Since
those
Steve is not here, Marcia, you're up.
All right,
And before you go into your thing, these policies we're talking about, can we get a copy of these policies? that
so
we're-
I've got them on the list that, and I've got the ones I know I want to steal from to adapt.
Mhm.
That, but one's a fund balance policy that I helped this particular town create it, so I know I like it. And we have some just minor things to do, and I just have to get.
Thank you.
No, it's not a matter of getting, just curious of what they are, so we have
There were
some
two that
heads
we-
up.
There's two that are high on my list. There's three. Fund balance policy, and to share with you that the GFOA has a risk model that you can use, and we're gonna end up to be about 16.6%, which is what their new threshold they like to see, and their model may always end up there, or higher. So that's one, and how do we get there is what's in the policy. It talks about any excesses that we have that only half gets spent. If we need to make additional appropriations, we never budget for a profit, but if we make a profit during
Right.
the year, we retain half of it until we get to that, whatever level we decide, 16% is what I'm thinking, and then the rest stays there. So that's kind of what the policy says. The other one's a debt service policy. My own opinion is I would like to see every type of debt included in there, so that, the big one I see is not here, but in other towns, neighboring towns, the Board of Finance, not Board of Finance, Board of Ed, for example, will say, oh, we can't afford a big increase, but we'll pay you sick time when you leave. We don't want that. We want to have a policy that makes sure that that doesn't get done. So that is, the two big ones. The little one, I just want to have an encumbrance policy because the auditors have talked about it. I've shared a draft with them, but,
Okay. I'm supposed to make a note, Mr. Lucas made the meeting at 7:03. All right, Marcia, you're on, let's go.
Okay, so, revenue, you have a budget to actual for the revenue, that is underneath your folder. That, this is
Underneath.
The big one that you
the short one, of the two underneath your folder. That, you might feel that it's a little bit wet because we finished it at about 6 o'clock. But that's the revenue through December 31st. I haven't had a chance, like I did with the expenditures, we met with each of the departments, we talked about it, I didn't have a chance to do that with the revenues, just to make sure that they're all there. Tax collections are, the second half will be this month, we're in good shape. When there was something unusual like supplemental tax, is way at 15%, but that's a January bill, so those were just advance payments that came in December. Telephone tax payment doesn't come in yet. The next one, licenses and permits, we're at 50% a year, 49% here. Some of them that had zeros I checked into, they're very small. Intergovernmental revenues, we're primarily on target. We've got that town aid road money that we were supposed to receive a payment in July, and we were supposed to get the second payment in January. That apparently the governor is not going to bond that until he gets his tolls or something like that. Some politics like that. I'm not sure that's the exact one, but nothing we can do about that. We're still supposed to get it. The next page, we've got all the miscellaneous little town clerk fees and charges for services. The one that I want to call attention to is last year we did an additional appropriation to put $23,000 in revenue for the senior center programs. They had been netted in the past. We also had senior center trips that had been in the seniors, the nonprofits books. We wanted both of them in our books. We wanted both of them shown gross, but because of the charter, we couldn't gross up the second one because we can only do $40,000 a department. So that's why it's showing here as way over budget. You'll see their expenses are over budget. That's just a function of complying with the budget. And next fiscal year, we'll show it as a revenue, budgeted expenditure.
No, we didn't do
Pardon me?
that. I remember this discussion, I don't.
We were going to add them both, and then we passed the budget, and then Tom Beecher said, no, you can't do that second one, because then it'd be over $40,000. So it was just stuck in the timing there.
Who makes that rule of $40,000? That is state
The
statute?
charter.
Our town charter, so it could change.
Now
If
not
there was a
changing
reason.
the charter.
I know.
But we can
We like
manipulate
to
it.
change the charter every year around here, sometimes it seems.
Oh, that's,
Let's not get there.
but we can, but I wanted to show it, even though it doesn't show gross
Still
in,
changing it.
even though it doesn't show gross in the budget, I wanted to show it gross in the actual. At the end of the year, we'll net it down. Investment income, when we did the budget, we had just started making the changes. We didn't have realized quite how effective they would be, so we're doing great. Cell tower rentals right on track, and then we've got two items of miscellaneous revenues that when employees don't use their HSA money by the due date, we get it. That's half of that, and the other half is credits from prior years. We've been trying to clean up all of our vendor accounts sometimes we had overpayments that were just sitting on the vendor's books, we've been pulling them in, and if it was for a prior year, we didn't net it with the expenditure budget.
Can I add this, I'm sorry, the Connecticut Big List, you're aware of that website?
We are, and we did
A couple years ago, I sent something to the previous controller, and we did claim some of that money from the state. It
and-
was small
And
amounts,
we
but
claimed some more last year, and ISA was doing that, and I think we have, I'll double check to make sure we have it all, but we did get some checks in.
okay,
the-
because the website itself is very difficult, so you have to type in, you know, to search, you search, you know, just BRO, and you see what it brings you up, you have to scroll and try to find something. But there's items from the school, you know, they're all, I would imagine, small amounts and credits from, you know, different vendors and whatnot, unclaimed checks or.
So we did send the paperwork in, we did get some checks back, I'll double check and see if there's any more out there. I know I personally have one there, but,
Yeah,
you know, it's about $5, and I'm not going through all this.
Right, right.
So what we are missing is something that we talked about was, where are we ahead? I mean, I can see the numbers, we're 63.41%, but where are we going to fall out, like, on the revenue side? What is our projected positive variance
So,
right
so
now?
that's what I was saying, I haven't had the time to do that yet,
Right.
because it is the 8th, and this is,
I know. But we
but
talked about last meeting a little bit.
there's
like,
two
hey,
places that we know we're gonna be ahead.
Yeah,
One is interest,
yeah.
and one is the education cost sharing money.
Yeah, how much are we gonna be up on that?
That, I think it's 1.2 that we're gonna get, so like 300,000 up.
300,000, like there was 300,000 on the investment income, so we, right, roughly up.
Yep.
So 600,000, then where's the big clunkers on the negative side, if you know of any, right, as of
I
now?
don't know of any right now, that, but that's what I wanna talk to the departments
Right.
about. That, because they're monitoring theirs, we're agreeing to theirs, so we've done the, quantitative work, but not the qualitative work. That, does that make sense?
Yeah, so when can we expect that, like,
Next one.
perfect?
So, what are the odds of the governor saying, I'm giving you 300 extra on your ECS, and I'm giving you 300 less on your town road aid grant? Call it a wash.
The budget has already been set, so it shouldn't happen. It has happened about 10, 15 years ago where they just didn't give us the second payment of the town aid road. It shouldn't happen, but I'm not saying it won't happen.
But in reality, we're not committing expenditure, so in reality, it's not like it's gonna risk us, it's a loss, but it's not a risk factor, right?
Understood? Just asking a question.
No, I appreciate that. But
Yeah,
I mean,
but
in the
it
reality
is-
of it, that's, we're not gonna spend that extra 600,000. Of my feelings is that's.
I certainly would want to, you know that.
So,
So it's possible that, but what I'd like to do is have this format the same as this format.
yeah, I like the new format.
Yeah.
This is what I've been asking for.
I know that, that's why we did it. So the second one is the expenditures, that's on the legal paper. You also have a copy of it in your packages that, with the transfers. The only difference, one, this is on legal size paper, and the second difference is the very last page that Steve didn't like the way I did the transfers, so the column for where the money's going to and a column for where the money's coming from instead of all in one column. But none of the numbers changed. So if we look at this, the first box is around the budget items. That we have the original appropriation, the Board of Selectmen did their approvals for both columns, the inter department and the intra department to get to the revised budget. If you approve it tonight, or if you approve it, it's a revised budget. We have the year-to-date expenditures. That's the actual through December 31st. The variance with the revised into the finance department. Issa left, we had someone else come in to do the payroll for a month. We had some savings by not having her payroll, by having an opening there for a little bit after she took out her vacation time. But we're looking to transfer. I don't think I can cover $2,000 from the other line items. So we're looking, that's one of our transfers.
Marcia?
Yeah.
I'm gonna interrupt you, ask you a question.
You
Do you want
ask.
us to ask our questions at the end, or better as you go down the page?
Right
for
now.
the question? Okay. Kind of a simple one, because I haven't been here in a few years. Can you explain your first two lines on this first page? Elected official wage and Board of Selectmen wage.
So the first one is Steve's salary, and the second one is Harry and Sue. And the Steve's salary, the Board of Finance wanted to.
So Harry and Sue are
Board of Selectmen.
4,500 each?
The
Yes,
second line, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
For the,
And we increased the
But-
first selectman's wage.
As of January, right?
As of January, so.
I understand, but the selectmen each get around $9,000 for a year, right? Or do they only get 4,500?
4,500.
So you pay them in full?
No, there's
It's
still
not.
45, 40,
This
that's
is the budget.
projected.
This is the
Oh,
budget.
So here
I'm
she's
sorry.
projecting out what we're gonna spend in the next 6 months.
There's no offense to John, where's John on here?
John is in the finance
Halfway down.
department. He is under elected officials in the bottom department,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
object
fine.
Okay.
51616.
I got it. I'm just trying to track
Well,
where
by heart.
everyone is on this.
No.
Thank you.
So if we look at page 2, there's nothing significant on page 2 with the assessor or the tax collector. Page 3, there's nothing too significant on page 3 with the personnel and IT and town clerk. Page 4, the registrar of voters, last year, for those of you that are new, that we tried to follow a little more closely to the uniform chart of accounts. And so we had, some departments had a lot of changes to make. And with the registrar, it's just trying to catch up to those changes. They think they'll be under budget overall, but right now they haven't given me the transfer request. I know they're working on that now. Nothing else exciting on page 4. Page 5, that there's 2 things that we're asking for additional appropriations. The Candlewood Lake Authority, which I think is a separate item on your agenda, and the regional animal control. I have to tell you, the regional animal control is my error, that I got a budget from them. They sent an update, Steve forwarded it to me last spring, and I missed his whole email. So I didn't put the updated number in there, so I'm
So
trying.
that went from 96 to 100.
I remember him telling us about that during the budget, because it
well-
hadn't changed in a while.
But it changed from 80 to
Oh.
96, but then the final budget, it changed to 105. So yeah, we thought the first budget was a huge increase, and the final budget really wasn't huge. But they did tell us, I just missed it in April. We have, on the next page, page 6, we have one unemployment claim that we know the amount, and we know the maximum is 26 weeks. So that's the figure, 16,640 would be for that unemployment claim. And then I do know a second person has applied. I don't know if they're going to get unemployment. I don't know what that would be. So this is only the first person that I'm talking about here.
Do we have a projected amount if the number 2 did end up, we don't have the verdict, do we have that?
We don't have any amounts yet.
Okay.
But,
Because I know sometimes when they send the sheet, you have to fill it out and you do all that, they give you a projected amount as to what you're gonna end up.
so HR gets that, and as of last week, when we met with HR, they did not
Okay.
have the amount. And we don't know if they're gonna get it either.
Cool, thank you.
We started a new org for blight, just because we have a new committee, they have some expenses for boarding up buildings. So that's what those 3 items of transfer are, is we'd like to fund that Blight Commission. They took in some money last year, so far they haven't taken any money in this year, but we need a budget for them.
What do they advertise
I think,
for blight?
I think you have to advertise when you're gonna take a,
Legal
Custody.
notices.
yeah, it's like the legal notices you have to place because you have to like make everybody
So we
aware
spend
what's
more
going
money
down.
in legal notices than we spend actually maintaining or repairing something.
It's,
I mean,
It's
we're talking about
legal
hard
No,
Requirement
so
project.
the repairing, I do know what that is boards on a window that was what that one was, just so no one would get into the building. The police are on track right now. The page 7, we've got the volunteer firefighters need have an extra 1,500.
I'm sorry. Can you go on the police and ask them why their prisoner maintenance is
Yes,
running?
I do know why that is.
Oh.
That, sorry to ask, because we've met with all these people. Their prisoner maintenance is usually just food, 'cause apparently we feed the people in the jail. But this time they had to extradite somebody, and so that's the travel costs of extraditing a prisoner from another state, another state.
Okay. So they don't, that's not something we're gonna have to expect to raise up next.
Correct, correct. On page 7, we have, this is the first year we've divided, there's 2 volunteer firefighters. This is towards the top of the page where you see in the third column, the negative 1,500. We have 2 things that we pay volunteer firefighters for. One is an annual stipend that if you attend the number of trainings, we do our budget early in the year, and they give us how much we have to pay for July 1st after our budget is done. So they gave us estimates, and we were off by 1 person in the estimate. So that's where the 1,500 comes in. The other thing we pay firefighters is if they've been a firefighter, we have a little pension program for them, and that's what the 40,000 underneath that is. But right now, we're on target with that. Nothing else exciting on that page. On page 8, the hazardous waste. I have learned more than I need to know about hazardous waste this week. That is over budget. And that's our biggest budget adjustment. We have hazardous waste days, and it used to be with HRRA, and it used to be we would have 2 days a year, in Brookfield. And then there were 2 other days a year in other towns, or maybe one of the, I think it's 2 days in Brookfield, and then there were 2 other days in other towns. And they never advertised to Brookfield people that they could bring their waste to other towns, but you can. And so there's a combination of 2 things. They're trying to advertise to the citizens that they can bring their waste to other towns, and citizens are getting those ads. And the second, and they charge us for it when they bring it, we get a proration of the cost. And the second thing is, instead of having 4 days a year, it's gone to 6 days a year, so that's why the costs have gone up. Any question on that?
Is that because HRRA decided to increase the number of days that they're collecting, or
Yes.
did we?
No,
Okay.
HRRA, and I talked to the director of HRRA.
Yeah, so it wasn't
To
we
get that.
decided to,
It wasn't us, but
Okay.
what she said was, she talked to one of our neighboring towns that has 14,000 residents,
yeah,
and they had, when they were complaining about the same thing, they had 14,000 residents, and 100 residents bring their chemicals to these hazardous waste days. What do the other 13,900 do? And that would be much more expensive if they just dump it down the drain. So she said, put your bitch in, essentially. Didn't say it that way. But we didn't have that figured into the budget. So the extra is, the one in Brookfield, we always have more people. We had one that nobody went to. So the two that out of town that others used averaged $3,000 each. We have two more, so it's 6,000 plus the current overage. Nothing exciting on page 9. Nothing exciting on page 10. And page 11 shows where we're getting the money from. That this was the first year. In the past, we've taken all our financing costs, whether it was for a one-year bond or a one-year note, or a multi-year bond, and I don't know if y'all caught his difference. When he talks about notes, that's a 1 year, and when he talks about bonds, that's permanent financing. But to me, it doesn't make sense that we pay for our 1 year notes over 20 years. So we tried to pull all the costs that we had last year for the 1 year notes that kind of to match them. If it's just a 1 year thing, we should pay for it out of this budget. And if it's a multi-year bond, maybe we pay it out of that. I'd love to take that one in the general fund too. So that's where the 73,000 is the costs last year. We went out to bid, and that's where we got Matt and a new bond attorney, and it's 1/3 the price. So we've got some extra money there.
So help me out.
Who found him?
Pardon me?
Who did this?
The town went out to bid for,
Who in the town? Whose idea was this? Yours? Steve's?
it was
Combination?
Steve's idea that,
Nice.
well, we're supposed to go out to bid for everything. And so we're developing this bidding calendar so that, because we're behind, so that we know that, okay, this is the year for this service and we do it again in 5 years. And sometimes it's been great. This was great. Snow plowing was, lawn mowing was great. Sometimes it's sucked a little. But that's what our
So
charter
this
says.
was totally from savings from bond or financing costs. But why is the definition new vendors after RFP? I'm sort of confused with your nomenclature.
That's the new legal counsel, right?
At the bottom?
At the bottom.
Yeah, well, it says
Yeah.
savings from new vendors after RFP.
So, last year, the bond council charge was $53,000.
Mhm.
This year, the bond council, I think, was 15,000.
So that's what you,
Right.
that's the vendor, that's the
New
vendor.
vendor.
Yeah,
Got it.
Not vendors.
vendors.
It's not a
He's a little cheaper too,
yeah.
but I don't remember the
Oh,
exact
okay, so there's
division.
two.
So there's two of them that were cheaper. His firm is doing some stuff that we had a firm that we were paying to put the stuff on Emma. We just started going through, why do we pay this, why do we pay this? And so that one, we asked him, and they can do it for $1,200. The other firm was charging us $5,000. So there's several vendors in there.
So I'm gonna ask another question, because I'm a little bit behind on this. So we made a savings of exactly $333,650, and that's the amount of money we're asking for with all these overruns?
Oh, no, that was just
Yeah?
to plug it.
There's some
She
left,
has-
there's some left, probably about
Oh, there
15,000 left.
There is some left,
Okay.
yes. And
That's
I
the next
didn't
page.
want to take that yet and say that and commit to, that we'd be
Okay.
over, because tonight may be costing us money, that we need to be asking questions. And the bond counsel is phenomenal. I hate to word, Steve always uses that word, is excellent.
Okay.
That she said, hey, you should do this, you should do that, just things. So we want to run a few more things past her when
Okay.
when we want to go out for leases, for example. Could you review this? So I did want to leave some money there, but so this number is just plugged in what we.
So
need.
this is a savings this year, but next year's budget would be a reduction on the line item.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, that we'll adjust next year so that.
Down.
it's correct.
Right,
For what we
okay.
think it's gonna be. So then at the bottom, this was mine, that I maybe made too complicated, I've been told, that here's all the pluses and the minuses, they balance out to zero. And then I just tried to tell you if I thought these were final savings or just savings as of today. Unemployment, I don't know that it's a final savings, but the savings on the firefighters is a final savings. That, So just, I thought that was helpful information. And then the second page is the exact same thing, but it's an easier format for some people to see, here's where we want to put money to, here's where we want to take the money from.
So now, you made a statement that you sat down with every department and went through these
Yes.
numbers, except for a couple of departments. I mean, every is so we should be expecting, unless something catastrophic happens, these should fairly hold true. I mean, I know they're small, because you met with, now do you meet with them every week, month, or is this now?
We've been since October of last year, we've been meeting with them every quarter.
Quarterly.
And then towards the end of the year, we met more frequently, especially with the bigger departments, or ones that had sensitive numbers.
So what's the plan then, going forward, the same thing?
Oh.
With the sensitivity of the bigger
Correct.
numbers? So
We
then,
do a lot of meetings.
I'm not belittling your work, I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
like, so the smaller ones will be quarterly, the bigger numbers you're meeting monthly. So when we look at this column next
Towards
month,
the end of the year, we met monthly, but what we've talked to them about and what we've got in our plan is quarterly, more frequently when needed.
so at the 6-month period right now, you're confident we're gonna be okay all the way around?
Correct.
Pretty much. I mean, again, we'll have extra revenue and our expenses are in line,
Our expenses are in line, yes.
barring something catastrophic that we can't
Correct.
control.
The ones that there was, the one that came up that we didn't do anything with is we have a police negotiations this year. And Fern's worried that we don't have enough money in that budget. We've got that and the pension attorney both in the same budget. So she's a little bit worried about that. But it's too early. We haven't started the negotiations yet. So she's just gonna have to worry for now. Because of the numbers that we got were from the attorneys on what he thought the estimate would be. That's our best guess right now.
Any questions?
I guess actually I do. Do we have to vote on this?
We got a later here, right, down in the new business?
The next one is just capital. We sold some bonds today, and I should really print this out for you, but the gross savings, this chart comes, there's another firm that comes in that's required to essentially certify the savings, certify that we're gonna have enough money to pay everything off, which all happened today as far as paying it off. So this is their calculation, so they were certifying that the savings is the gross savings, 274,316, and then the net present value of the savings was 256. And the way that works with fees for, like the legal fees for that, they all get rolled into the bond, so that's all after legal fees and all the issues.
And you didn't extend it out. And you did not extend the
With same period, yep.
Yeah, 20 years from 2010. The same maturity.
You can see them side by side there. And then the audit update, the financial statements are on the website, thank you, Dan. And of course, as soon as I put them up there, I saw some typos, but, I printed this out for you just so, because I thought it might be helpful. Pages of interest, I kind of put them in the order of what might be interesting to you or not, but that fund balance page, is page 16, the budget to actual 72, those are the most common things that people worry about in the financial statement. they don't think that they have to come back, we'll find out a little more. If you've heard something different, from what I know, they're going to do a final checking of the figures and disclosures. We have one item that we need to work with the Board of Ed on, that they have to do some compliance testing for the federal single audit, and our level of effort
What is that?
is an issue. That what it means is the Title I grant, I can't remember the number, let's say it's $500,000. And so they take a look at, here's $500,000, and here's what you're paying for those services in your general fund budget. The grant went up by 100, the general fund went down by 100. Can't do that. That you have to sustain your level of effort so you're not using the federal money instead of the state money. They had a question on that. I volunteered to help because I used to have to test it. So we're having a meeting on Friday. As far as I know, that's the only comment that they have. That I expect that they'll give us recommendations, because that's what I used to try to do, to make you want me to come back as auditor again. But that's the only negative thing. So we're going to look at it on Friday and see if they saw the whole picture, if there's something that's missing.
Michael did mention that on the phone with me today, and actually downgraded it even more than you used to, so hopefully
It would be, it's something they have to report. I'm sure it's not a non-material item. It's just, it has to be reported. If we can't clear it, it would have to be reported. And the frustrating thing when I was an auditor is nobody cares. The state doesn't care, the funding doesn't care. We had one town that falsified everything. I had to, spend a lot of time reporting this. The state said, "Oh, we don't do that here." Really? And, any questions on any of that stuff?
Thank you for your level of detail in the reports. It's really nice that
It was really-
every question we have, you have a response to it.
I thank the department heads because I spent a lot of time saying, "What is that prisoner maintenance?" That was
All right. I just asked to try to catch you up.
that's
I'll give up soon.
no, don't keep me on my toes.
The BOE financial report, obviously Rosa has a meeting tonight. You all are aware I sent the email off to the Board of Ed and appropriate personnel for our meeting for April 15th, Wednesday night, to go over those points, or January 15th, I'm sorry. So we have not got a response yet, but the response was they're working on it. They didn't give a detailed response, so we'll see where they stand. Report of the committees, Dan, you just went over.
So a little bit more on the audit. So the timeline, Marcia, from the way I understand it, is he was guiding me towards the last week of the month to be ready to issue. And I believe that means that we have to have a special meeting if we want to get it in by the end of January, as opposed to filing another extension. Is that correct? So we gotta schedule a special meeting. I think we did it last year and it took like 10 minutes, if I remember correctly. But we have to have a quorum to present and approve the audit, and that would be the last week of January, one day the last week of January. Okay? That's right.
Can we discuss that
Yeah,
now, like
sure.
as a date we can all make? Is that
And
something we
the
can?
question is that, and it's the same question in every town. Do you accept it? Do you approve it? Do you have to do it before it goes out? And you can do it any way you want to do it. But officially, you don't have to approve it, and you probably shouldn't approve it. You should accept it.
Right.
And you don't have to accept it before it goes out.
You don't?
Because it's to you. We have to sign off on it before it goes out. But I don't want to change any policy that's been there in the past. Last year, he wanted some specific things because we were making all those prior period adjustments. He wanted to make sure that you knew about them, that you understood them. But a lot of times boards of finance don't see the report until it's issued and they're handed it in paper. So that's all up to you.
Yep, so I mean, we're really trying to button up and we're getting good. I don't wanna cut corners yet, if that's okay with everybody else.
Yeah, this is your baby.
I'd like to do it at least one last time and
Okay.
have a special meeting to discuss.
Agreed.
So it would be that last week, and I'm open that whole week, so.
29th? Wednesday? Does it keep it?
I'll be on an island, but I'll be happy to call in if you
Oh,
need.
we don't,
me.
no, we don't,
We
as
said-
long as we have 4, I mean, 29th, can you make 29th?
Yeah, my son has a track meet in Bethel, but I can get here by
Sure,
7.
29th.
For
Sure.
sure.
Do you wanna
Let's
make
do
it, no, the 29th?
29th.
Yeah,
at 7
let's do
o'clock?
29.
29th, 7 o'clock.
Okay, and hopefully it'll be quick.
Right, or if you have a little bit, we could maybe go 7:30
That's
if
fine.
it's like, if it
That's fine.
helps you out for
7:30 would
7:30.
be a little bit easier for me, because
Okay.
I have kids activities
7:30.
ending at 7,
Perfect,
so.
Perfect,
Perfect.
7:30.
You do it here
We'll do it here.
for Diane.
yeah, and so we have to post a special meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brown and
Yeah.
Diane will take
Okay.
care of that.
All right, and then the other conversation that we had to do with the timing, and I did talk to him about, you know, why it's, you know, we originally thought it was gonna be earlier, and then we were promised it was gonna be the end of the year, and then we fell off the schedule. So we talked about why it lagged and how we can avoid that. Because I know your goal and my goal as well is to have it within the calendar year. And he assured me that we're a priority and all of that. There was a little finger pointing about, you know, Marcia did this, and then you say, so there's a little bit of finger pointing going on, which, you know, I don't love. My question for you is, does it, you got the department, you ran the department ragged, you ran yourself ragged to be ready in August, and we're still sitting here in January, we're not done. So does that make any, is that what you plan to do again, or?
Yeah, the Board of Ed didn't like that it was before the EDO one was due, so if we could do it in the first 2 weeks of September next year, if we could do that. However, from their point of view, have we earned that spot? I mean, because we were so bad before that, I don't know if we've earned the spot. That some of the finger pointing is correct, that, because once the other things came on, that, I was just trying to stay ahead of them, so I don't think that that's wrong.
I just want to avoid, you know, over-promising a timeline and then
Well,
having, you know.
But it was so great this year to have it done early,
Okay.
because we need all those numbers for the bonding. The bonding is gonna happen in November, probably every year, that, we need so we use those numbers on a daily basis, so we need them anyway.
Okay.
That, so,
Okay.
I'd like that if we
I mean,
could
it's
get.
your department,
If
so
we
I don't
could
want.
get the first 2 weeks of September and then make the Board of Ed a little happier, that would be fine. But it's not helpful if we don't have the numbers.
Yep.
Yeah. And I accept some that, because I wasn't pushing them. And
Yep.
if they weren't, they didn't say they needed it, and I just put something else in front of it.
Okay. All right, that's it. So I'm confident that it's gonna come, that the 19 one's gonna come back as clean as last year's, if not better, and then we'll work on the next one. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. So then I guess it's time to, I make a motion to approve the calendar, meeting calendar for 2020 as presented.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I just had a question. We had talked at the last meeting about having them at town hall. Dan said that we have the YouTube here, and it was easier for Marcia and Steve to get over here and YouTube.
YouTube conference phone.
Okay. So we have the media center on here, but I think we initially moved over to the high school because we had all the library stuff happening and the room was exceeding capacity.
Right.
I don't know if there's any thoughts of being back here. I don't remember where the conversation ended.
It didn't really end.
It ended, we were gonna think about it.
Okay.
I think right at the end, Dan said the audio was better here, and then we're
Yeah.
gonna.
They have fixed up the problem you guys had reported about, like the humming or whatever it was on the microphones.
Okay.
But we do also have the conference phone here. I know you guys have had times where
Yeah.
Sean or somebody else wasn't able to make it in, and you had your cell phone on the table.
Yeah.
And I know that 2 meetings, Diane brought to my attention, would have to be at BHS anyway, the high school, because the town offices are closed.
Okay.
Right, that's on February 12th and November 11th. because they're just holidays, so we can just do the town hall, Wednesday, February 12th, and Wednesday, November 11th. We would have to do it, just secure the media center at the high school, and then all the rest can be at the town hall. I don't know.
My opinion is bring it back here for the simplicity for Steve and Marcia.
Just because town hall's closed doesn't mean we can't have them here.
I have a key.
Steve has a key, Marcia has a key,
Doesn't matter.
John probably has a key.
No, I don't, actually.
Well, the only thing I brought to the attention is it's Veterans Day on the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Schools are, we go to school on that day.
Yeah.
I didn't know if, since it's a day off, that you would be here or not. So that's up to
No,
I'm
if you
just
can or do
making
you
a
wanna be
point,
here,
but-
I mean, I mean, if we changed it to a Thursday, is that gonna make a difference to any of us? I mean, if you're off on a holiday, do you really wanna come to Brookfield and
in
sit in a meeting?
February as well.
Yeah, there was
President's.
just two, yeah, it was President's Day, and I mean, as long as it doesn't, you know, coincide with anybody else's committees, you know, I know, but the RBAC is at the end of the month, so, it's, I'm happy wherever.
I'm fine. I'm fine, we're not going anywhere.
Well, holidays or move it? You wanna move it?
No, I
or-
would, I would keep it.
Keep it?
No, I have no problem.
Alright,
Okay, that's fine.
You?
No, let's do it. And town hall?
Sure.
Okay,
I'm all for all of them.
town hall for all.
It's easier for you and Steve,
I love
right?
it here.
The rest of us travel anyway, that's what I'm saying, the rest of us. And if we see that we're getting a lot of people, like Sean
Yeah,
had
we
anticipated, we'll have to make an amendment, right, and move it. But the last year of meetings, we haven't had more than 2 people at an attendance extra, I don't believe.
I agree.
So,
I don't have to remember to turn the microphone on, so that works.
so how would we make that motion then?
So you'd amend the motion to accept the calendar with the correction of town hall.
I'd like to amend that motion to accept the calendar, proposed calendar to be held, the meetings, Board of Finance meetings to be held at the Town Hall Room 209 to the dates that are on the sheet.
Second that amendment.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Glenn, I have a question. Do we have a schedule yet for the March budget meetings?
Not yet.
Okay.
I can give you the calendar from last year. That
I mean,
has-
I'm gonna go away
I'm-
from
I'm-
March this
I
year.
am, I'm just budgeting every night that month.
Except typically Fridays.
So
And
Yes.
Mondays too
Email
sometimes,
that
I think.
Some
Yeah,
Mondays.
Yeah,
We could put that on the agenda for next
Yeah, let's do
next
that.
month then.
let's do
Okay.
that.
I won't be here.
It
for
gives
next one, just-
Steve some notice so he can try
So
to.
you're gonna give it to
Yeah,
Brianna,
so we can talk
the
to the
old.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so to coordinate when they're gonna show up.
Right.
So we can start working on that.
Yeah.
So I will sit with, Eileen, send it to me, I'll sit with Marcia
Okay.
during next week, and then I'll give it to you.
Sure.
All right. So on to new business. Marcia, you had the financial model.
So I have to apologize that I might have overpromised that, but I'm working on the financial model and I'm trying to make it interactive and you gave me a whole list of things. So this was the where I'm standing right now because we want to see the back years. We want to see the original budget. We want to see, well, what if they want $500,000 of new special ed? So we've got to be able to figure that in there. This would give us the final budget. So we've got some changes there. When it comes time, we have the actual to put in. Next year, the projected figures are coming from the budget plus this ratio of this increase. Then, so I have them out for the rest of the years that were in the model here that just all expanded. So I think I hit a lot of the points there with what you're looking for. When it comes time, that the assumptions, we can change them. We can change them year by year. So what if we had a 6% bump this year, and then it goes back to 2.4%, or however we want that. So I'm trying to work that in. I've put extra lines here. Last year I was new. I didn't know that they asked for investments every we've got, so that's kind of where I am right
So
now.
my main goal was that we could sit at a meeting discussing a big number and plug it right into the
Correct.
model and see the ripple effect.
Correct, and you had asked for this model compared to the old model, and it's not gonna be on the summary page, I was gonna have it on a separate page, just so that it's not overly
Yeah, I
complicated
agree
on
with
one
that.
page. But I think I've hit all the points, I just have to finish, I want to, and then the second one is just as far as putting in these projects, we had them last time with the, I don't know where I put it. We had them last time, some interactions with capital assets and debt, and I just am trying to expand upon that so that we can do a better job. So,
I wouldn't overcumber yourself, you know, and make it too cumbersome, but you think, what I'm looking for, and I think Dan has asked for this too many times, is just a tool where we talk these numbers, what's the real effect of the number? Right, I mean, you talk about 500,000, sometimes it doesn't have a big effect, sometimes it has a knock-on effect.
correct.
And that's, I think, what I was looking for, Dan, I don't know, when we
No, I
talked
think,
about
no, I
this.
mean, yeah, I think you're, so you're, it seems like it's on the right track. I think that we're getting what we're gonna be asking for, is what I'm hearing described.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so too.
It does sound like we're asking for a lot, especially when we're talking about
I know.
folding in last year. I think that putting it on a separate tab makes sense, so that you have, here's where we are and here's where we were type of comparison. is good. I'll offer, when you think you're done, if you want somebody, a second set of eyes to,
That'd be
to try to break it. Sometimes I do that when I build something, I send it to my CFO and he says, I put something in that cell, it didn't make sense, and then, so I'd be happy to try to break it.
That'd be great. That
Okay.
I think I told you last year that my husband is a partner in the CPA firm that I was a partner in, but he did this. He was one that taught me how to do this years ago. We worked together for 35 years, so I did share it with them, and we did spend our Saturday night working.
How romantic.
It was.
So you see this also as a useful exercise?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not like you're just being burdened with extra work, this is something you feel?
I don't know how we could have made that decision last year
Yep.
without this. I don't know how you can operate without something like this. So
Okay,
that
I just wanna make
you
sure
know
we're
where
all
going,
together.
that,
Very good.
Any questions from your side of what we're trying to do with that?
I understand, and
Yeah,
I'm thrilled
Lee.
where we were when I was last sitting here.
I think it's a tool to make decisions,
Wonderful.
right? Because sometimes what you think is big isn't necessarily
Yep.
a big number, and sometimes what you think is small has a bigger ripple than what you think.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Marcia?
No.
Okay. Next on to the RBC representative. Don't worry about it, I'll just take it on. I'll go and I'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Marcia
I
said,
just can't do another.
no, I'm good. Marcia said that it's Thursdays, once a month.
Yeah, and they limit it to an hour. They're really.
Yeah, they limit it to an hour.
Michael, real.
And years past, Board of Finance wasn't even there.
Right.
So we'll see how it goes.
So, I think it would be good, Matthew talked about how pensions are, could at some point over this spring, have them come in and make a presentation of what they do and how they do it and how important it is. It's critical, and I don't understand it.
Me neither, but I'll learn. How's that?
Okay.
So I'll do it for now, and then if
Yeah.
it's so above my head, maybe we'll have to talk about something else.
Okay.
How's that? But
Okay.
if I can handle it, I'll go. All right? The next on the list we put on is a student identification study, and I don't know if it's our purview as a Board of Finance, not our purview as a Board of Finance. The thing is, we're spending a lot of money on the new schools. We're looking at a lot of the extra costs on the Board of Ed side that they can't control. It's not that they can't control, unexpected. I'm not putting it on a mistake made or anything like that. But are we really sure all of the students that we're paying for as taxpayers are true students of the district? Again, I don't know. A lot of people have asked me about this. A lot of people have talked, I believe, to Marcia about this. It also rolls into, are we getting our tax dollars for cars, registrations, and everything else? We're looking, we have a lot of growth, we have a lot of projects for growth in this town that we're spending money on. are we making sure that it's truly residents? Now, again, I don't know if it's our purview, it was put on the agenda for discussion, but can we put forth money to get a baseline study to make sure our tax dollars are going to residents?
Right, so we may need a ruling from like council on whether it's our purview.
Wouldn't you need any appropriation to come from Board of Selectmen first? And we'd recommend.
Well, we gotta do a lot of things.
Right,
I'm sure.
right, I get it, you're starting the discussion, but it would have to originate.
Go ahead, Marcia.
May I talk?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that you may not have to even do that because I know that there's been an effort started with Steve and the assessor because I've seen some emails and I know that it was talked about this morning in the staff meeting that he's had her give him a list because there's a number of houses that are in Danbury with a Brookfield address, so you may want to check with him on the actions that he's already started, and they may alleviate you even having to wonder about it. See what I'm saying?
I feel like if you're going into this student level, then that needs to get brought to Board of Ed.
I agree.
We can't get into the privacy issues within.
We're not, I don't wanna get into any of that. I just wanna appropriate money if it's a useful tool that we can, figure out what we have.
I like the fact that to me, it seems more of a two-pronged approach. One is, we find out if the kids that are paying, families live here honestly and are paying taxes, great, we need to take care of them, it's great. If people are cheating the system, they need to be held accountable. But also, I've noticed a large number of out-of-state, you can't even tell if they're out of town, because if they have a Connecticut plate, but there are numerous New York plates. I've seen Pennsylvania plates every day dropping their kids and picking their kids up. So if they do live here in town, great, and they're paying their property tax to go here, but they need to pay their automobile tax here too. So you get that side as well. Because there's cheating the system. It's not.
Is there, are you familiar with these quote-unquote studies, or is there something that?
I had talked to a few people and I spoke to Marcia and she said she was somewhat familiar
Okay.
with it. We thought the price range was gonna be around $25,000 to $30,000 in the preliminary runs.
Okay.
We're talking, and the school is overwhelmed with a lot of things, so I'm not,
Yep.
again, I'm not in their shorts and I'm not trying to, would this be a help to get a baseline going that we can appropriate some money and figure out what do we have? The town has grown in so many ways right now that we're not accustomed to. Do we really know what we have?
Would this be something we can bring up next week? Because everybody will be.
No, it's a special meeting.
Oh, okay.
We can't bring it up.
Sorry.
It's just something I wanted to talk about the feeling here before we presented it to the Board of Ed, or do we present it to the Board of Ed?
Well, we can certainly ask Mr. Dunn where he stands on it, what his actions are planned to be.
Maybe start there.
So that'd be great, because I know the assessor was talking about what she can do, what she can't do, what she'd like to do,
So then how about we take it this fold? We put it on Steve to get the number to do that assessor. He then talks to the superintendent and says, if we were to spend $10,000 more, we can incorporate this into the study, maybe we'll help you out.
Right, because I agree with, if we're gonna go down this path, then just concentrating on, let's look at everyone, let's look at cars, let's look at, that's just not just concentrate on the student aspect of it.
Right.
But
That was
all
right.
potential revenue sources that are, or expenses that we shouldn't be.
That was the main goal.
Yeah.
Probably was labeled wrong
Yeah.
on the agenda, and
Yep.
that was the thought process,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
To figure out if we have these increases that we're looking at, that we need to spend, we need to pay.
And one of the other things,
Cost benefit as well.
one of the other things that goes along with vehicle tax, but businesses where the people take their vehicles home,
Right.
they need to pay the taxes to the town, and many businesses all list their cars as being listed in the town that happens to have the cheapest taxes that one of their guys lives in, so we do not do that. But, that can be part of the
Yep.
study as well.
So that's what the assessor was talking about, the taxes, because that's what she's working on now. And some of the, so she's got ideas that she was discussing on what some of the other towns do. And you can have a special camera. And the police do have a special camera, but they can't use it for this because it goes through some federal database, which is private, and you're not allowed to use it for any, share it with anyone other than police.
But I mean, thinking of all the new rental properties in town, I wonder how much people know that they're, I mean, people don't necessarily know or aware that they're even supposed to register their town if they're renting and they don't own property. And so maybe an awareness of that is another step of it, which
I
maybe
agree.
the assessor would take care of. And
She
there's
has
something
This
that-
is what, I agree wholeheartedly. There's so many
Absolutely.
different things that
Yeah.
if we,
Yeah.
I guess the question was, would we be willing as a group to fund this if we could see a value? And then we can let Steve talk with the assessor, Steve talk with the, to put together a proper
Yeah.
And
program.
to me, there is a sense of urgency because the time to fund it is now during budget season.
Right.
Whether it goes to an assessor's budget or probably looks like it's not a board ed budget, but wherever it goes, we should want to be getting some preliminary thought of what it's going to cost.
Agreed.
Now.
And just to be clear, the assessor does send letters, because I found out,
Right.
it's impressive what she does do. I didn't know that, but she does send letters to the apartments. She does get a
Okay.
list of
It's hard to
people
not know.
that, well,
You have to
I
work
don't
the-
know.
work
that-
You have to work.
Right, but it's the
Yeah.
follow-up and then the execution of
exactly.
it. It's the,
Yeah, how do
and
you
this is what we
execute?
really need to know, because it's hard to follow up if you don't know the true story. That's part of the study. If you know the true study, then you can follow up
Okay.
accordingly.
Yeah, but she does do an awful lot right now as far as reaching out to the management companies, getting rental lists, comparing that to what she has, comparing each unit and saying, do we have a car, do we have a car, do we have a car? So there's a lot that is going
Right, I
on
believe
that
that.
is to reassure you.
So then we'll leave it as, I'll talk to Steve.
And
I'll go to.
maybe go from the approach of it like a taxpayer, I think.
Yeah,
Just
taxpayer.
versus a
Right, there you go.
Yeah, it was a wrong nomenclature.
No, that's okay.
But
That's fine.
what we'll do is we'll talk to Steve, talk to the assessor, then bring in the superintendent or the board of ed. When we know the scope
It'll
of
be
the
part of the
project. Then we look at the cost of the project and see if it's worthwhile. Like you say, cost analysis,
Yep.
if it's only 30,000, I think you get your cost analysis back. I think that risk is very
Yep.
low for the
Yeah.
return.
2 to 3 kids and you made your money back.
Yeah, even taxes on 20 cars,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's
20
true.
cars.
Yep.
3 commercial trucks.
So
Yep.
I mean, I think that's,
Yep.
all right.
Great.
I think we've,
Or
Okay.
houses,
Keep that.
yep. Good. Good idea.
all right, so now, the COA, we need to, like to make a motion that we appropriate in the amount of $2,375 from Department 105-4803-58305 finances for unanticipated expense in the CLA's FY 19/20 budget.
Second.
Discussion. Marcia, would you like to walk us through this at all?
So we get a budget every year from the Candlewood Lake Authority, and I'm doing it by memory, so I may not have all of the facts, the numbers right, but 20 years, 15 years, that they have been mapping the milfoil in the lake, and and this goes through First Light. Well, First Light has changed their vendor this year, and they're going with a new vendor, and CLA is concerned that it's not continuing the process. There's a lot of continuity that needs to be done in this mapping, and so they're asking for money so they can hire and continue the former vendor at CLA's cost to make sure that the mapping is done, to make sure that they agree with the other, the new vendor's mapping and findings, that just to have a little bit of an independent look at that.
Okay, so First Light is doing it on their own. The CLA wants to hire someone to double check First Light.
They already had hired somebody.
So
Right.
first, for.
They changed vendors without CLA.
First Light
knowing.
didn't let them know.
Right,
So First Light was in the wrong.
Yeah, no,
That's my understanding too.
First Light had vendor A for 15 years, and has switched to vendor B, and CLA is uncomfortable and would like to hire vendor A themselves, at least in this transitional year, to have some comfort.
It's a validation process, I mean, the way
Have any of the other towns, do we know if any
New
of the
Fairfield's
other?
already
Yeah, New
contributed.
New Fairfield has already
Rather
contributed.
Yeah.
For me, the lake is such a vibrant part of our community.
And,
How do
yeah.
how do you turn down
No, you don't,
$2,300?
but I
Yeah.
just wish First Light was not playing so many games. Because it benefits them to not have milfoil too, invasive species.
Well, they feel they're doing their part, right? So it's a double check to move over. I mean, for the.
No, I'm not saying no to the money, just frustrated.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the appropriation? Motion passes. All right, we did the financial advisor presentation already. And then I believe now, right.
Back to that sheet.
You still gotta make a motion for us to talk about.
Yeah, I don't even know what the motion would be.
I'll give you the letter for the select.
Yeah, we do right here.
Yeah, we do.
So,
It's in the packet.
Yep, so the last one.
All
It's
right.
to approve the attached.
Yeah, all right, I'll make the motion. I'd like to make the motion that we approve the attached intra and interdepartment transfers / adjustments attached and as presented to the Board of Finance for approval.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? I think we pretty much went over it during Marcia's presentation, the
Correct.
numbers, the twos, the froms, and everything.
Correct, they're comfortable with the numbers.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any other items to come before us tonight?
We can't ask that because it's a
It's a
special
special
meeting, it's
meeting.
not on the
All
agenda,
right,
so
perfect.
motion to adjourn.
Public comment, nobody's here. Motion, go ahead. I'll second the motion.
Oh, I think.
Oh, it is.
because we had to adjust the
Yes.
agenda, I think the
Oh.
agenda got added on to the game.
Yeah. You know, I,
Yeah.
before we do that, on the public comment side, I don't know. Would you all consider, after public comment, that we had a session where we can talk to the public?
I don't know if it's, I don't know.
No, hear me out. I hear what you're saying.
I would be in favor of it if it were limited to responding to something that was brought up, but not a back and forth.
I guess sometimes I feel uncomfortable when somebody speaks and has like a question and we can't respond to the question. In other words, a valid point.
I mean, I guess if there's the first public comment, I know that we have commented back to the,
Not
kind of
posted.
informally, like, if it fell into a topic that was on the agenda.
Right.
One of my concerns is someone comes up, they take all this time to put forth a presentation to us or a comment to us, and they walk away from here like no response, no answer, no anything. So it's almost like discouraging to the person who comes to the meeting that took all this time to do whatever they did, present it to us, and we say, thank you very much for your time, and we walk them out. I'm asking, I'm not dictating, I'm just saying, I know we can maybe control it somehow, I don't know.
I think it almost has to be a case by case
It
basis,
can't be
depending on
open.
what it's
It
really.
can't be a conversation.
It can't be open to back and forth.
Right, but
So it could be response at chairman's discretion. I don't know if I like that either, but response at board's discretion to public comment. Do it. I like the idea,
Yeah, I understand it.
because I hate having people say something like, all right, get out.
Sometimes there is no response, so.
and I appreciate that. What I'm saying is that if they come here and they put forth that effort, a lot of times, other people say, why am I even gonna go? Because,
So are you suggesting it while the person's still up there speaking? Or-
No.
Okay.
After,
Do
like,
all the public comments.
all
get
the
them all
public
sit back
comment,
down.
and then an agenda item response to public comment, I don't know.
And then, yeah, as chairman, does anybody have a response to Speaker A? I would like to say that.
Right.
Or to any of the speakers.
Yep.
We could, at that point, we can, as a group, say, no, we're not gonna speak to anybody. Or if there's a point that's like a valid point where someone really asks us a question that we can answer, that's a valid question. I hate when they go away and we don't give them an answer. I hate, like I say, and we all know certain speakers we have to deal with, but I mean, some people when they come, they gotta respect if we can answer the question.
I mean, there's factual questions, there's opinion questions, there's questions that we're not gonna have we're not gonna agree on.
Right, but
And
our
then
answer
there's-
could be, we're gonna look into that.
Yep.
You know, I mean, something. Thank you for bringing that up.
It was just a point on
I
the
know,
comment
yeah.
section of, think about it for
Yep.
next meeting and we'll
Okay.
talk about it. I'm just saying we can leave it at our discretion, but I sure would like to, if someone asks us a real good question and valid, I would like to have the opportunity, if it's a financial, for Marcia or Steve to answer somebody.
Mhm.
That's all.
Okay.
All right,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I'm drinking water, sorry.